Welcome to Stadium BS. For more information, check out www.castellonns.com.
Stadium BS is in the house. I have a very special guest with me. We've talked quite a number of times already, and he has some very great insight in the sports business world as well. I got introduced to him thanks to Evan Weiner. Check out his interview. Um, and he has a lot of insight in regards to sports media. So I want to bring on the show Mr. Jim Williams. Jim, how are you?
Frankie, I'm wonderful, my friend, and it's great to be with you. I want to thank you for the invitation.
I appreciate it. Trust me, I appreciate it so much. So, if the audience doesn't know, there's a lot of things going on with sports media, especially with rights deals and all that between all sports, and it's getting crazier by the day of actually trying to watch your team. So, I have an expert on that one. And Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, basically, um I I've been in this business for 52 years, which means that my primary care doctor is a paleontologist. But anyway, it's been a while, and we ended up with a situation here. I began my career at WTOG, which is an independent television station in Tampa, St. Petersburg, and my job at 22 was to produce and oversee live programming. And at that time, we had John McKay, and we had the Rowdies of the NASL, which was in its heyday, and then we got the Buccaneers preseason and John McKay show. So, my involvement started there, and at that point in time, in the very late 1970s, pushing into the 80s, most of the people uh, got their sports on local TV through syndicators like Raycom and TVS and Lorimar and some of the other syndication companies. And so basically, you would get your game on a local TV station who would clear it because everybody wanted to watch sports at that time, and it was easy to get. That moved into the cable time, which in 1980 I left Channel 44 to become to work with Southern Video, and then from Southern Video, what we did was produce sports for pay per view and also for cable, because there was a hybrid situation. Major cities didn't have cable, so we would basically have a situation where they would, over the air broadcast station would scramble their signal, and we would give you this little like cable box type thing. You'd put um, a little I want to say it was kind of like the things you used to get into hotel rooms. Put that in there, and that would decode it, and then you'd be able to watch the games as well as movies. So that went on for a while, and so in 79 and 80, that was big because two things happened then. And I'll shut up after this and we can talk about it. Ted Turner,
You're fine. You're good.
okay, Ted Turner in 79 decided he wanted to do CNN. And so he went to banks, to New York, to all the different investment banks. Couldn't find anybody who would lend him the money to put it on the air because they didn't think it was going to be a major, uh, you know, anything that anybody would want to watch. So he literally put Superstation, which was on the air at that time, up for collateral. Went to a Chicago bank. They gave him the money, thinking that they were going to own Superstation in about a year. And then he launched CNN, which became quite popular. And he also had CNN headline news, which he then syndicated wisely to independent stations around the country, so they would have a morning newscast that they wouldn't have to produce.
I totally forgot about headline news. I remember that very
Yeah,
well from
that
back in
was
the
that.
early
Yeah,
90s.
yeah. He had, and so what he would do through the deal was you would then, whatever news operation you had, wherever it might be, you would then be a contributor to that to CNN. So, if he wanted something from Charlotte, or if you wanted something from New York, or if you wanted something from, Los Angeles, an in-house deal where they would, he could ask for whatever they wanted. The news director was Reese Schoenfeld at the time. Reese could ask for whatever he wanted, and they would, send it to him. And so he built a nice little, building of good reporting that he could put on CNN as well as also on headline news. At the same time, you know, Bill Rasmussen started ESPN, and he couldn't get any money to do it because he went to 3 or 4 different companies. They didn't want to be a part of it. So then he went to Getty Oil, and Getty Oil decided, okay, well, it's a relatively cheap investment. Um, and so they started, he started uh, ESPN, and he was at the time the director of broadcasting for the Hurricanes. Uh, the team at that point was in Connecticut, and he was trying to find some land and an office complex where he could put the building, and that's where Bristol came in.
Good old, yep. Good
Good
old
old
Bristol.
Bristol. I remember the one building in Bristol. That was a long, long time ago. So basically, these networks floundered from '79 until '84. They, there would be we would go out and we would go to cable companies and we would say, hey, look, it would be good if you carried our programming. And from our standpoint as syndicators, right, we had no problem getting people to carry our programming. But ESPN and USA at the time didn't have the money to pay for the programming. So they would pay for the tape delays. We get paid from ESPN about $2,000 for a game, and from USA about $2,000 for a game. So, and I remember that all the football that we did couldn't be done live because ABC and CBS own the live rights. So we could either do a pay per view or we could do, you know, a sale to them. So everything changed in 1984. 1984 was uh, the Cable Act, which was signed into law by then President Ronald Reagan. It allowed cable companies to bundle their content in a way that would allow them to make up money that they were spending in cabling. Cabling a large city was a phenomenal amount of money. And if
Oh
you
yeah.
won the franchise to be, let's just say Philadelphia, for instance,
Hmm.
in those days, we're talking now 1980s money, not now money. It would probably cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million to do that. Well,
Hmm.
if the cable company was going to front $52 million, they wanted to make sure that they would be able to get some of that money back. So that is where we began the age of the regional sports networks, because Westinghouse, who owned um, a deal with Warner Communications at the time, as well as Comcast and some of the others, decided, okay, well, let's, sports is good. It's been wonderful for us for a while. Let's see if we can get more sports on the air. So we ended up producing a lot of sports, still with the regional, um, you know, people, as I said before, Raycom, TVS, etc. But now we have a different client base. We have a regional sports network. So I went to work for Ali Sherman, who ran Warner, and we began the process of where do we want to put these things. So we ended up putting them in Pittsburgh, in Cleveland, in Detroit, in Dallas, in Houston. Um, then Chuck Dolan in New York already had Sports Channel, which many of the folks on the East Coast know. So that was all they covered New York City, and so then that began. And so, as things moved on into the mid '80s, we were starting to make money from RSNs, and so you figure $3 a subscriber, and you've got 10, 5, 10, anywhere from 3 to 4 million subscribers. It can add up pretty quick. You can start making money. The RSNs were built, and usually built, with the idea that we weren't going to turn a profit for the first 3 years. That was just because we had to pay rights fees, we had to pay production fees, and
Yeah, you're
transmission
not
fees,
going to turn a
all that.
profit. Yeah, first
So
three
there's
years
no
anyway.
profit. So we would, if we could make it work in 3 years, that would work outstandingly. Well, by the late '80s, that was, man, we were turning it over in a year and a half because money was flowing through the pipeline. Suddenly, ESPN had money to spend on programming. Suddenly, USA had money to spend on programming. There was also you know the HBOs and the Showtimes who came along, and they had money to spend, not necessarily on sports, but more on movies and syndicated television that they created. So that's where the genesis of all this thing began. Was in the late '70s, early '80s, and at that point, as cable began to really flourish, so did the money. And as each time, you'd look up and say, okay, well, this year nationally, we have how many subs? Well, nationally, if you were lucky in being in ESPN or USA or one of the top, um, you know, uh, cable operations out there, you're seeing, people go from 40 million subscribers to 60 million subscribers to eventually 100 million subscribers. At that point, I mean, you're talking ridiculous money. And so that's what fueled and built ESPN, and it built CNN, and it built most of what we know today as our cable programming folks. So it became extremely profitable, and it then threatened, frankly, the ecosystem that we were used to, which is free TV, free sports, and where do we go from here? The leagues decided to keep free sports, but much less of it.
So that explains when I was a kid in the 90s, that in New York it was Yankees and Mets. The majority of the games were for the Yankees was MSG Network, and the Mets were Sports Channel. But you probably see a game here and there, maybe basically on the weekends. For the Mets, it was Channel 9,
Right,
and
OR.
yeah, WWOR and WPIX for the
Yeah, 11,
Yankees.
Channel 11 for the Yankees. Um, just a little historical note. The Yankees and Channel 11 were together longer than any other team in baseball, even after they went to MSG. Um, and that relationship had been, years. OR began in '62 whenever the Mets became a team. So those two New York stations were integral in getting the one thing, and I will give credit where credit is due to Chuck. God rest his soul. Is that he was a believer that baseball had to be they had to be at least 25 to 30 games, which would mean, you just mentioned it's like once a week. Well, baseball season is about a 25-week season. So there'd be a game of the week somewhere, either on a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon that would be simulcast on Sports Channel or MSG, but it would be it would definitely be on the air at Pix or on WOR.
And from what I understand, from from a business standpoint, the RSNs were mainly a primary source of income for sports teams, like the majority. Is that correct?
It didn't start that way. It was a definite um, it was a definite revenue source that they had not ever had. So, as it started off, as I said, it began more as a trickle than as a flood. Um, and so, and you have to understand that the Major League sports teams were not, they weren't crazy about this concept of, of, um, of airing games on cable or pay TV
Yeah,
because they were afraid that people wouldn't show up at the home games. Um, and I remember having this conversation in negotiation with Gabe Paul, who at the time was the president of baseball operations for the Cleveland Indians,
mhm.
and Mike Fetchko, who was their broadcast guy. And we were offering them for 40 games, 35 were at home, 5 were on the road, $1.6 million. Now, at this point in time, $1.6 million wouldn't buy you a rookie third baseman. But
That's
back in
true.
the day, we're sitting there talking to him. This is $1.3 million that he would never have had, right? Because
True.
there wasn't anybody bidding against us, and he wasn't making that kind of money off of his television, his local television deal. So he begrudgingly did it. But my pitch at the time, which was a pitch that we used through Allie and all the rest of us, was, look, you go to, you mentioned the Yankees, all right?
Hmm.
Cleveland goes to the Yankees, right? And that game is being aired on regular broadcast TV. And you're sitting here going, by the way, you can see these, the Yankees will be coming to Cleveland in a couple of weeks, and and you're losing 10-0, right? And you're like, come on out to the ballpark and watch this. Well, what am I coming out to the ballpark to watch? I'm going to watch the Yankees beat the crap out of us at home. So our point was you win more at home than you do it on the road. So if you're talking about promotion, you know, wouldn't you want to do games and show people having fun, being at the ballpark, and there's a much better chance of you winning. So after a while, baseball began to realize, as did the NBA and NHL, that maybe we should try a little of this and see how it works. So it wasn't like the day that we went in there that the switch went over and we got all these baseball games. We didn't, or basketball games or NHL hockey. It took a while. It took a good 5-6 years of proof of concept that they weren't going to lose, fans. If anything, hopefully they would gain them. So, so that was, as I said, it took us a while to get there. And when I say a while, I mean I would say 80, 88, into the 90s.
Wow. I was gonna tell you. The so pretty much in today's age, if anyone is listening, anyone younger, like younger than me listening, it's pretty much equivalent to a Kickstarter idea, technically. And trying to make that whole, which at the time RSN became a huge success and a great revenue stream. Let's fast forward to 40 years now,
Hmm.
um, of how today is. If you could tell us how it is now and why Main Street aka the FanDuel Sports Network, which was Sports Channel in the very beginning, Sunshine Network, whichever, that they bought each of them out. Tell us what happened throughout those 40 years to today. Why is it such a downfall?
Well, basically, they ignored, and when I say they, I mean, I was part of this, but I was, I did kind of see, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I wasn't the only one, that there was a canary in the coal mine, you know, that once streaming began, that people, and even before that, when Blockbuster and Netflix and those were, they weren't streamers yet, but they were a force in changing the habits of how people watch television. You can throw the DVR in there, okay?
Right.
Because what happened now, and it's transpired over the last, I would say, 15 years, is prime time is whatever time you want it to be or I want it to be, right?
Right.
I don't have to watch something live on TV because back in the day I could have DVR'd it. Now I can stream it on one of the streamers.
Correct.
The only appointment television is sports. You want to watch a baseball game, a football game, a
Yes.
basketball game. It starts at noon. It starts at 2. It starts at 6:30, 7 o'clock, whatever. So appointment television became, sports became the only thing that streamers, broadcasters, and cable people still cared about, because again, they were making money one way or the other. If you DVR'd it, if you watched on on Paramount Plus or Peacock or whatever, they're still getting their money on that.
Yes.
But here's where the thing started to turn, and this is where the canary in the coal mine started.
Mhm.
A few years ago, I want to say it was pre-COVID, ABC and Disney purchased 20th Century Fox, and
Yes.
that was the movie studio. Okay, they didn't purchase the network, they didn't purchase the programming, although they licensed the programming to Hulu.
Yes.
So technically,
Which now is
Disney
becoming
owns.
Disney Plus. Mhm.
Yeah, which now, yeah, it's Disney. Disney's going to figure out a way to make this all work.
Yeah.
Hulu's going away, and they're just going to roll everything into Disney Plus over the next year.
Yes.
So anyway, as fate would have it, Fox at that point owned at that point, I think it was 21 or 22 regional sports networks, which included the ones you had mentioned. My
Yes.
old network, which was Sunshine Network and Sun Network, and then of course there were actually two. We competed against Chuck Dolan with Sports Channel, because there was a Sports Channel Florida, and then there was our group, which was Sunshine Network and Sun Sports.
Mhm.
Anyway, um, at that point in time, we started to see a decrease in cable subscribers. People were starting to get a little bit. I mean, cable at that point in time, you could be paying a two, three, and in some cases $400 cable bill, a
Yes.
month. And so people were going, oh, wait a minute, there's these streaming things. I'm getting the same television that I wanted, same TV programming that I wanted. Okay, I'm not getting my baseball or my basketball or whatever, but I am, can I live without that? And we were starting to see, especially on the regionals, there's, when you lose 10 million or subscribers, you're going to lose, percentage of the money. And so when it was decided that Disney could not own the Fox regionals, because the theory of the case, the original theory of the case was Fox's regionals, ESPN was just going to take it, flip it, and that was going to be ESPN Plus.
Right.
And it'd be regional ESPN Plus.
Mhm.
Well, the they were not allowed through the Securities and Exchange Commission to do it, because they said this would be a monopoly of sports. because ESPN obviously already had multiple sports contracts. So it was decided that there would have to be a third-party buyer. And at that point, you're looking at it and you're going, wait a minute. They evaluated it at X, right? I think it was like, I don't know, I can't exactly recall, but it was somewhere south of $20 billion. Well, they owed more than that. So,
Oh boy.
so you're sitting there going, okay, how in the world are you going to take this, make money on it, and absorb the rights fees?
Exactly.
You know, it was a problem that you looked at and wait a minute, this is not going to happen. I mean, if anybody who buys this is going to be an idiot because it's not going to work.
Right.
You're losing cable subscribers, and those contracts that you sign with sports teams are solid numbers. You're going to have to either go back and renegotiate deals, or just go out of business, one way or the other.
And
Well,
that's why they're missing payments.
well, what happened is then Sinclair, which is one of the largest broadcast owners of broadcast stations around the country, came up with the thought that, okay, wait a minute, we can step in here, we can renegotiate these contracts, and we can make money. Well,
Right.
I mean, I don't know what planet they were on, but I've dealt with sports. I've dealt in this business for a long time. I have never seen an owner willing to give back money. Okay, so that one I'm thinking, okay, this is nuts. Well, Diamond kept it, and that first it was under Bally's name. And again, let's be clear on this: it is not Bally's is not going out of business. FanDuel are not going out. They just bought network and naming rights. Okay,
Right.
so they're fine. FanDuel's fine. Bally's are fine. And so when Diamond realized, wait a minute, we're not going to be able to make these payments, and they go to court and they get basically go file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At that point, the league started to figure out, wait a minute, what's happening here? This is not a good thing. But teams were still, buying into the concept. Well, they'll pay us. Well, if they don't have any money, if they went into bankruptcy, so they went into Chapter 11 reorganization bankruptcy, and they came out as Main Street. Now, Main Street was just simply a different name by which the another company, if you will, that inherited this. Okay, so it wasn't
Yes.
like Main Street went in and bought it; they inherited it. So, it's one of those things where, yeah, we won this, and we were given this in court. Thanks a lot. It's like, what are we going to do from here? Well, Main Street started to call back on some of these and said, look, I believe Cleveland was one of the first in Minnesota. Some of the, I think it was like 5, the Diamondbacks, the Padres, Colorado. Anyway, those were the ones that fell under the we can't pay it anymore, and we're being upfront with you about this. We're going out of business in those areas.
Right.
Figuring, okay, well, we'll keep these other 16, and maybe we can make that work. Well, they started missing payments, and this wasn't just recently. This was a while back. And again, there's your canary in the coal mine. At that point in time, by the way, over the 10-year period that we're talking about, cable went from 100 million households to what it is right now, which is about 51, 52 million households.
Cut in half, pretty much.
Totally in half. And, streamers are paying, carriage fees were automatically reduced. And so there wasn't money coming in. I mean, there was money coming in, but it wasn't as, as a brick as in the amount that would sustain the regional networks. So Major League Baseball was the first, and Rob Manfred decided, wait a minute, we're going to put together, because they have BAM, which is Major League Baseball Productions. And they are the ones who have all of the it's like Sunday Ticket for baseball. I forget what they call it, but anyway, it's all the baseball games
Trying
that
to remember.
you can it's a season ticket for all the baseball games.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
they didn't have any local rights. So if I wanted to buy it, and live here in the Washington area, and I want to see the Washington Nationals, I couldn't do it. I could buy it. I could watch every other game, but I couldn't see the Nationals. And if the Nationals were playing, Los Angeles, I couldn't see that game because it would be blacked out totally. So baseball was like, look, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Let's start working with the teams to get those rights. Once we get those rights, we can get rid of the blackout laws, which the RSNs were holding,
Right.
and we can put everything together in one nice package. And then that way, when our contract comes up in 2028, not only can we sell national rights, we can sell, local rights as well.
Wow.
So that, that brings us up to today, where the 9 baseball teams backed out of the mainstream deal. Because Main Street had said if they hadn't done a deal with DAZN, which for those who don't know, DAZN is a very successful streaming company in sports in Europe and Asia and the Middle East. They tried to get into sports here in the United States, and basically they entered the U.S. with rights for boxing and combat sports because that's the only rights they could get at the time. In Canada, they do have they're the home of the NFL season ticket, and they've got some basketball ticket, that sort of thing. So they're handling the pay-per-view type packages in Canada, and because they haven't made as much headway there either. So DAZN was going to come in, buy this, and that was going to be their entry to the U.S. market. They would go in, buy the company, and take over the rights situation. But they wanted to see if they could get it with a reduced rate and basically a new hybrid system of saying, we'll pay you if you'll take a 20% cut in
Mhm.
rights fees. We'll then go to 50-50 rev share. Well, the baseball teams went, no, that's it. Sorry, we're not going to do it. So the NBA and NHL teams, um, they've been informed by Main Street that they will be shuttering at the end of the present season. So that's where we are right at the moment. And what we're finding out, because I've done evaluations of the Tampa Bay Rays, of the Nationals, of the Angels, and some of the other teams,
Mhm.
is that last year the Vegas Knights, the Phoenix Suns, the Clippers, both of the Utah teams, the basketball team, the Jazz, and the Mammoths, took over their own rights. And they put everything on free broadcast. They then put together a streaming package
Yeah.
where you can buy the streaming package.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like Back to the Future. We have what's going to work now is an over-the-air broadcast component
Yeah.
that will still be on cable, obviously, because
Mhm.
it must carry for the broadcast stations, and a streaming component for those who want to just stream the games and don't want to
Mhm.
have it. And that also includes, by the way, they would be included in if you're a subscriber to YouTube TV or Hulu TV Plus or Direct TV or any of the satellite services like Direct TV or Dish Network. You would get the
Yes,
baseball games as part of your regular package. Okay.
correct.
So, can you make money back? That I guess is the key point. And in my analysis, I found that if you were to simply up carriage fees a minimum, maybe $1, $2, it depends on obviously in other markets. And if you were to sell advertising and get a local bump from from the station groups,
Yes.
and then take money from what the MLB will be giving you, you can get, I would say, 70% back to where you were. Um, in 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 the money that you're not going to get from the RSNs,
Hmm.
and you control your rights, and the league controls all the rights. And I think that's where we're headed. It's successful. It was very successful this year in Utah. It was successful with the Padres down in San Diego. It
Yeah.
was successful for the Phoenix Suns and for the Diamondbacks, the Rockies. Everybody seemed to think that this model, which goes back to when we're talking about back in the '70s when you could have 120 Yankee games on picks, and 120 Mets games on WOR.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to sound weird, but um, it's going to actually benefit the fans because you're
Oh,
going to have a
yes.
lot more free access to your teams, whether it be Major League Baseball, and the NBA and the NHL are following Major League Baseball's move here. And so for the fans, I think this is a big win.
Oh,
For the teams,
that is,
yeah.
yeah. And basically, it's minimum $30 to get an antenna. So it's a great investment. I have one in my bedroom, and
Mhm,
that's all I could stream is the local channels, and I'll watch anything through free TV.
mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're a subscriber to YouTube TV, they carry all the local stations plus the sideband stations. Like each station has, not to get too deep into the weeds, but each station has as many as 3 substations
Yeah.
that you can offer. And a lot of people put Me TV on there, and they put was some of the others, Antenna, which is one of the it's basically old television shows that you can watch and enjoy. Um,
Oh, yeah.
it's good content. It's old content, but it's good content. Anyway, so the new players are going to be Scripps,
Mhm.
who were Scripps was a big player in local sports in the Midwest back in the day. We used to syndicate through Scripps a ton of college sports and a ton of you know of other content that we did. Sinclair, ironically, will be involved because they have a big group. Next Star, which is another big station group, will be involved. And so, where do they get the money? Well, they'll get some of the money from carriage fees. Remember that FanDuel was probably pulling down $4 to $5 per subscriber, you know, per region of your cable aspect. If I'm and by the way, TV stations usually get somewhere in the neighborhood between $75 to $1, sometimes $2 for their carriage fee.
Mhm.
If you can renegotiate with the cable companies and say, all right, look, I'm bringing you this, which used to cost you $5. I'm going to bring it to you for $1 or $2. I'm pretty sure that that's not going to have a problem in renegotiating the contracts. The cable carriage contracts for the local TV stations.
I got a
Some of that,
question. This is
sure, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Now, see, I've been, you know, pondering this question and trying to figure out a way to not only keep broadcast TV, because I've been hearing that's dying itself. Like no one's watching an antenna no more. The only time they're watching is live sports. Why doesn't, if it's making more money for the teams, why doesn't, let's say, an ESPN, a Fox Sports, NBC Sports, whatever the case may be, their main channels, why don't they buy the actual TV stations themselves and just create an all sports content? And then you could add the news and all that, as part of it, and then put all the like primetime TV shows into streaming. Why can that be done?
They can't afford to do it.
Really?
That's bottom line. I mean, right now, 50% of Fox's overall programming budget goes to sports. And if you look, what's NBC doing, right? NBC, now that they got the baseball package away from ESPN,
Right.
the Sunday night game, that gives
Yes.
them Sunday night programming year round. They can go from NFL Sunday night football to, NBA, and then they can go to Major League Baseball when Major League Baseball comes back. So that's where they are. The streamers, and this is where you can't really equate it. Streamers, Apple, Netflix, and Amazon Prime, YouTube, that's not their core business. Okay, it's just a minor portion of their business. As a matter of fact,
I remember you telling me about this. This is good. This is real good of how you explained it.
yeah, the amount, I'll give you an idea. Amazon right now, which they're the most active of the streamers with regard to, having the NBA and the NFL. It's less than 10% of their overall budget for programming. Okay, it's less than, for sports programming. I'm sorry, I should put it that way. They still have money to burn in that aspect. They aren't even close to being they can write a check tomorrow and take over everything if they wanted to. Apple TV, who has the baseball package on Friday nights, and they kept that. They just got F1, and they got the soccer package, the MLS soccer package. That's only 5% of a $17 billion content budget. So, what we need to watch out for, and what baseball and the NHL and NFL and everybody's looking at from a league standpoint, is when these new contracts come up, streamers are going to be a massive part of it.
Absolutely.
Now, how much of a massive part can we get away with? Because I guarantee you, when the new NFL contract comes up, that one of those afternoon packages, whether it's CBS's package or Fox's package, they're going to get blown away by the amount of money that one of these streamers is going to would pay for it. Now, remember the other thing: the streaming services are worldwide. CBS is worldwide. Fox isn't worldwide. None of the local, none of your linear broadcast networks are, international. They sell international programming, but they don't. Go ahead.
It was funny because when I was when you were talking about Dotson, I wasn't familiar with Dotson. I said, let me look him up real quick. And this is another thing, and I'll probably ask for your take on this one. I'm on a VPN, okay?
Yeah.
And I have it set to the UK. And when I looked it up and I went to the site, guess what they had first and foremost? The NFL playoffs.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, I didn't know they sold those rights to them, but I was like, well, it was just something new I knew. I was like, something new
it's
just figured out.
Sky Sports, buys their content from, ESPN basically they're buying the content from the leagues and from, if the league doesn't own, let's say that we're speaking strictly of college sports right now. ESPN, Fox, they all sell their college sports in a package to Europe. Okay,
Hmm.
but Apple, Amazon, Netflix, YouTube, all of their content when it goes up, it's everywhere. Everywhere they are in the world, that's where they are. Which is why the MLS wanted desperately to be part of that,
Right.
because that way, I mean, if you look at it, Lionel Messi's contract has been paid for by subscribers just in just in the South American countries.
Yep.
So it's, as I say, it's right now the delicate balance is, where do we put these different sports, and Major League Baseball, the NHL, NBA all think, all right, let's make a mixture of free over-the-air television, uh, streaming packages for those who choose not to, who choose that they don't want to buy an antenna, or choose not to buy an antenna. Um, they'll pay, basically you're going to pay somewhere between $75 to $100 a year for your local team. Unless, of course, as I say, you have a YouTube TV or one of these streaming services that act like a pseudo cable
Yeah.
package. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I get all of this stuff about what people are going. Well, what's going to happen with what are the teams going to do? Where's the because they get money from that, and that's important. And there's not all the RSNs are going to go out of business. I mean, you got Yes Network and SNY in New York. You got Nesson in Boston. You got the Los Angeles ones for the Dodgers and the Lakers.
Oh yeah.
They're not going out of business. However, they are not they are not immune to the same problem that everybody else has. Okay, just because the team owns the RSN doesn't necessarily mean that the RSN is going to in any way, shape, or form um, continue to print money at the level that it has for them. And you also have Comcast owning the Philadelphia, NBC Sports Philadelphia, and NBC Sports in San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
So they're there, but there will be they will fill it in the pocketbook. Maybe not as much as these other teams, obviously, but
Mhm.
they're going to feel it, and the same is going to be the case of the NBA teams and the NHL teams, and frankly, what it's going to do, and this is just a prediction by me. It's not anything that I can quantify. Um, when Steve Cohen spent $700 million on Juan Soto.
Yeah.
And look, I got to tell you, I've have been a Juan Soto fan because, of course, he came up to the Washington National system as a 16-year-old.
Yes.
So I love Soto. He's a good kid. He's a fine ball player. There's nobody on the planet worth $700 million
That's true.
with regard to sports, or for that matter, anything. Unless you're curing cancer or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can't stop owners from being stupid, and
Or
that's something.
mesmerized by Scott Boras.
Well, Scott, it's funny. A real quick personal story on that. One of the things that we used to do at Channel 44, because we would bring in out of town baseball. So
Mhm.
we'd bring in the Cardinals and the Reds and a bunch of other teams that where spring training home was around our area. But one of the deals that Major League Baseball made us do was we had to produce a um, a game of the week from the Florida State League.
Yeah.
So we did a Cardinals game, and I was normally, and this was when I was doing play-by-play. Normally, I would do it with my partner was Robin Roberts, a former, he's a Hall of Famer from the Philadelphia Phillies as a pitcher. So Robin got ill, couldn't make it, and so I'm rummaging around trying to find if there's somebody in the in the ballpark that was a former player or maybe a scout or somebody could sit in. And so I asked the guy who ran the St. Petersburg Cardinals, um, you know, who's going to be here tonight? Or do you expect there's going to be someone? And he said, I don't know. But he says, you know what? He said, the player of the week last week sprained his ankle on a on a close play at first base. He's not going to play, but he's a very articulate guy, and he wants to get into law, and he might he could certainly do a be a nice replacement. And so I said, okay, sure. So the second baseman for the St. Petersburg Cardinals was a guy by the name of Scott Boras.
Mm-hmm. That's
where Scott and I became friendly, is when he served as a color analyst on my broadcast of a A-League Florida State League game.
Wow.
And Scott was a ball player. He had potential, but he injured himself as early in his career, and decided, let me just go out and become an agent, and he's done well for himself.
Absolutely.
So anyway, long story short, the RSN failure was they got too greedy too fast. They overpaid on rights fees just to get them, and now they're feeling the pain, and that's why the streaming services are stepping in. I mean, the $76 billion contract that Adam Silver negotiated with the leagues, has a very strong, component with Amazon Prime. And
they advertise it like crazy. I have a Fire TV, and they advertise the NBA like nobody's business.
Yeah. Well, remember that those games that are seen on Amazon are seen around the world.
Yes.
So you're not, you're marketing the league to an international audience,
and that's what everyone's pushing now.
And Apple, that's the reason Apple bought the Friday Night Baseball package, is they were hoping to get as many opportunities to have the Dodgers and that the cadre of Asian players that they have on the team.
Yeah.
Was very important to them. I don't know that they got a lot of Dodger baseball in there, but the fact is that they did get baseball, and baseball is huge in Asia. It's growing, and it's always been huge in the Caribbean, and
absolutely,
it's becoming more and more of an interest in Australia. So there's growth markets here. But bottom line, I do think that the death of the RSNs, or at least the death of a majority of the RSNs,
yes,
is, as crazy as it sounds, may end up being more fan friendly than what we've seen in the past. Because at the end of the day, baseball, basketball, I leave the NFL out of this because they just print money.
Yes, they do.
So there's just no, that will push them aside, much as you would push the Premier League aside if you were in Europe. They need to fill seats. Okay, they need people to want to come to the building. The more, because to make up for the money that they're not receiving, you cannot have empty buildings. You can't have situations where people just don't show up to the games anymore.
Right.
And by utilizing over-the-air broadcast and marketing and being creative, excuse me, pardon me for just a second as I get a little drink of
You're
water.
fine. You're good.
Sorry about that, guys. I got the Sunday morning frog.
I know the feeling. Trust me.
Okay. Anyway, um, they'll be able to. I mean, the analysis I did for the Rays gave them approximately 6 million potential, viewers at at $2 a pop, and that's not counting the money coming from Major League Baseball or advertising or anything like that.
Mhm.
Even at one, right? That's $7 million a month. So, it adds up. And if you put the little piles of advertising money and other cash in there, you can get up to 60 uh, million pretty quick. Um, so I mean, the point is that over-the-air broadcast combined with the streaming, combined with the cable, combined with what Major League Baseball can cobble together, should, if these teams, choose not to be stupid in how they spend their money, um, they should be able to keep competitive.
I hope so. I really do.
Yeah,
I,
I mean, it's
and for,
basically it's basically people overspending that and I did forget one small deal to mention. The $6 billion deal that Spectrum did with the Lakers. I'm sorry, with the Dodgers, and then the $3 billion deal that they went with the Lakers. That's
right.
guaranteed money. Okay, they don't. I mean, if Spectrum, which they're not going to, but if Spectrum goes out of business tomorrow, that money, it will be put into a frozen account somewhere. So
Absolutely.
that money's there. Those are the only two guarantees. The Yankees don't have a guarantee. The Mets don't have a guarantee. The Phillies don't have a guarantee. The Red Sox, even though they own the networks, you know, part of the reason that Masson let the Nationals out of their deal is, Major League Baseball, in what can only be, one of the most bizarre situations in baseball, they gave the TV rights of the Nationals to the Orioles, and the Orioles would then pay them up to 30% of what Masson brought in. It was a disaster from that one. It was a disaster from day one. Um, so at the end of the day, they were let out of the contract because they couldn't pay them both. In other words, even though the Masson owned the Orioles and the Nationals uh, rights fees, the fact that both teams had to get the exact same amount of money,
Hmm.
there just wasn't any way that would happen. So rather than Masson, saying we're going dark on the Nationals, they just let the Nationals out of the contract, and since they had been in legal, you know, in lawsuits for probably the last decade and a half, um, everybody was happy to get out of that one. So billable hours. Sorry for the attorneys who are built beach houses from that, but they're definitely not in that anymore. So. Um, so they went back to the MLB.TV group. Now, the MLB, just to be clear on this as well, the MLB TV, those teams who will be joining that, the
Hmm.
Major League Baseball productions will take over production of all of the broadcast. And the
Right.
rationale behind that is that they want all of their games to look like a network game.
Okay.
So, and again, not to get too deep into the woods on this, but um, the whenever you can't pay for something, in other words, if the regional sports networks, if they say, okay, tomorrow we have to pay, the Braves X amount of dollars. Okay, well, we have to cut something.
Right.
Normally, they cut production, so they'll pay the team, but there'll be less in the quality of the broadcast might not be what it should have been or was in prior years. And then they'll cut pregame shows to from an hour to a half an hour. They'll all the programming that would be around a game is being condensed um, to an. I mean, I've seen 15-minute pregame shows now, which used to be hour pregame shows. So all of those cost cutting situations will be taken away by the fact that the league will be hiring the remote units and it's basically the model that MLS did. MLS wanted every game to look great. They went out, they brought in NEP, which is the largest and most productive. I'm sorry, not productive, the largest and best, I should say, without question, production company in the United States. As a matter of fact, they're the largest in the world, and they took over all of the MLS games, and those games, look exactly the same. The amount of money they spend, and streamers will spend, because streamers don't have you know sports departments, um, so they will pay. As a matter of fact, NEP produces all of the streamers' stuff. They produce the doubleheader, the Christmas doubleheader on Netflix. They produce the Thursday games for Amazon and their NBA package, and you know, so whatever goes on streaming, NEP does it. So the streamers do not hold back on paying money. They're the broadcasts, any streaming broadcast you see, it's going to be done, on the level of the NBA championship or World Series.
Unbelievable. That's that's amazing of how everything turns. It's evolving, and whoever has a great business idea and they say no, but you find the bigger picture towards it, and that's what streaming is. It's the bigger picture, and they're aiming for worldwide. So
And
years from
ratings
now,
mean and ratings mean nothing to them.
yes, ratings mean nothing. It's basically subscribers, correct?
Yeah, think of it this way. All right, think of it as a lost leader. I'm getting people to subscribe to my channel. What am I going to be able to do? If I'm Apple TV, I'm going to be able to hopefully sell them Apple computers, sell them Apple watches, sell them Apple anything that Apple sells. You know, that's my audience.
Yeah.
Anything that Amazon sells, which is pretty much anything,
Yes.
is why they have no trouble spending on the NFL or the NBA. I mean, think about it. It's like, it's not our core business, but it can help us sell more of the stuff that we already are selling.
You know what it reminded me of? And it just dawned on me when you were explaining that. Kids TV shows. Kids
Okay.
TV shows, what do they rely on in order to keep the show afloat? Toy sales.
Yeah. Cereal and all kinds of stuff.
Correct. So I was like, I just thought about that. I was like, that
Well,
makes perfect sense.
well, in your concept, let's take that one step further, right? Why do you think they call them soap operas? Because they were appealing to women, and what did they do? They sold women. They sold, they were brought to you by, people who made, Downy
Yep.
and any kind of cleaning product. It was the soaps that were driving it. It's the reason that the NBC television network exists,
Yes.
because the when they came into business in the 1930s, talking about television,
Hmm.
the 30 Rockefeller Center's name prior to 30 Rockefeller Center was the RCA building. They sold color television. That's why
Wow.
they were in the business. I mean, first they sold televisions, and then in 1960 they debuted an entire network of color programming, which CBS didn't have, and ABC didn't have. So, they were the first to do. So they were selling televisions. And
Wow.
Westinghouse was selling radios and television.
Yep. Amazing.
So
Amazing.
as crazy as it sounds, we're we're kind of back to the future.
Yeah, pretty much. Everything circles around. I remember what Evan said to me. I'll never forget it. And this interview that we're talking about is going to be mid-February. So the Evan Weiner podcast will be end of month. And there's one thing that he said that I won't forget. It was about who were the two biggest market teams in Major League Baseball back in the day, like 1950s. And I'm thinking to myself, like relocation, that it was going to be the Giants and the Dodgers. It's like, no, it was the Dodgers and the Yankees. As who are the biggest franchises now? Dodgers and Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much like what you were saying, Back to the Future of what actually does work.
I'll tell you a funny, quick story about the Dodgers when they first moved to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And this was told to me by Vin Scully, and what a tremendously gracious human being Vinny was.
Yeah.
Vin goes out, and they were going to play. They were trying to figure out where the Dodgers were. They knew they were going to build a stadium, but they had to play someplace before they built the stadium.
Yep.
And so they played in the Los Angeles Coliseum, which was never built for baseball.
No, it wasn't.
Nope.
That configuration was hilarious. Wow.
Yeah, it was. It was maddening. And it's funny. I mean, because I've done games out of the Coliseum for many years, and I thought, God, I can't even in my mind. I can't even figure out what it would have looked like. So anyway, Vinny would basically say to the audience, bring your transistor radios, because there's going to be things you're not going to be able to see. And they
Right.
didn't have jumbotrons back in those days, right? So,
Right.
so Vinny's saying that, they had so many radios in the stadium during home Dodger games that he could say something, and they would repeat it. And so he said that when an umpire would go out to the mound, he could say, let's count to see how long he's out there. So you'd hear 50, 60,000 people in the stadium counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So Vin realized that, I got an audience here. I can play with this. And so he would do, these crazy, wacky things. And so generations and generations later, if you go out to Dodger Stadium, which if you are a baseball fan, it is absolutely still one of the iconic buildings in baseball. It's the third oldest behind Fenway in Chicago's Wrigley Field.
Absolutely.
It's just it's amazing how they have renovated and renovated and renovated that building to be both an amazing complex to watch a game, but also to have the same type of amenities as a new stadium. But yeah, people continue. If you go out to Los Angeles to this very day, you will see people bringing. Now you can hear it on your phone, but they definitely still listen to the Dodgers. And ironically, when Vinny was doing those games the last few years, he simulcast. He was by himself, and he was simulcast on TV and radio for the first 3 innings. Then he was on TV for the rest of the game, and then Charlie Steiner and Rick Monday would come in and do the radio portion from the 3rd inning on. So it's still it's still very important. The radio component is still a very important component to sports.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think don't fix what's not broken, but hey, you need the money. pretty much.
Well, it depends. If they fix it so they get the money, that's great. If they don't, then what are you gonna do, right?
Exactly.
And if you
Jim,
want, we can talk about anything else at another time or whenever you want to. We can talk
yeah.
about. I did get. I'll give you a real quick update on the Rays situation.
Yes, please.
Their home. It's looking more and more like the stadium will be built on the grounds of what is now Hillsborough Community College, which is about a 110-acre plot of land that is across from Raymond James Stadium
Yeah.
and within easy walking distance of Steinbrenner Field, where the Yankees train. And they're going to. The theory is to build a massive, you know, setup like Atlanta has, which they call it the Battery,
Yeah.
which is it's an entertainment zone. It's a place where you can sell like mid-rise condominiums, office space, all that. It's like a little town,
Yeah.
and they plan on that process. And the first and very most important meeting will be taking place on Tuesday
Yep.
when Hillsborough County's uh, the Hillsborough Community College Board will sit down and decide if they would enter into a you know a an MOU with the Rays on the study of what it would be like,
Yep.
and that's the first step in the process of how it goes. As a matter of fact, I have a story up on Sports Talk Florida which explains what the steps that need to be taken for that to happen. Because you're gonna have to relocate a campus of a college,
hmm
and it can be done. It's just a matter of how it can be done, and so we'll see. But the Rays Stadium deal is on track at the moment. As by the way is the Washington Stadium, despite the fact that the president wants to be the stadium to be named after him. That's another topic for another day for another podcast. But yeah. Um, so the two stadium projects that are on track at the moment are Washington and the Rays situation. Still a long way to go for both of them, but they're at the moment they're on track. God knows what's going on in Las Vegas. I
Okay.
don't. I
Yeah.
don't think they do either.
I don't know about that one. I've already got upset with both the Rays and the A's during when they first announced this stuff. So I was like, I just it was just a sore spot. I'm grateful that the Rays have new ownership now and they're buckling down. It was funny. I this is my last thing, and
Yeah.
I'll let you go. Um, I was talking to a very good friend last night. I'm like, I've been friends with him for close to 22 years.
Hmm.
And we talked about our experiences in Florida. He still lives in Florida. I don't.
Hmm.
Um, and I told him, I said, it made me a little sad that they're picking the HTC site. And I was like, why? I said, I went to school there. I had a job out in Tampa towards the stadium and all that.
Hmm.
And I went to classes in the morning and I worked towards the evening. So basically I worked till like 11 to 7 at my job. And
I was a
was
teaching assistant at that campus.
oh wow. We probably crossed paths.
I doubt it,
Probably.
but yeah. But given the fact
s-
that you were growing up in the '90s and I was in Washington by that time. Um,
Oh, okay.
but I do have I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean,
Mhm.
whenever they talked about the campus, but I also heard from I'm very tight with a number of politicians down in that area, and
Right.
so many of them were telling me that Del Mabry campus had to be rebuilt because of the fact that it just wasn't a fit any longer for what they needed. And so my understanding is that the relocation area, and this will be for those of you who are not Tampa understanding where logistically.
Right.
Hillsborough County, I'm sorry, Hillsborough Community College is near the Tampa Airport, International Airport. Okay.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, you can't build any structure more than 10, stories, because you'd be in the flight path of a landing strip.
Yeah, they're near a landing strip.
Yeah. So the new location, which would be in the West Shore area, which by the way is maybe, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm guessing maybe a 5-10 minute ride from there, depending on traffic, to the West Shore area.
So
There's a
you're
lot more.
confirming? Are you saying
Sorry?
that they might move over to West Shore?
I would say that's the preferred place that they want to go, because there's land there that wasn't there years and years ago when you and I were there.
Yeah.
And so the ironic part of it is that's West Shore still near the airport. So
Yes.
so the new HCC campus would be, the new HCC campus would be moving basically, for all intents and purposes, no more than 3 or 4 miles from where the one is that's right now,
Yeah.
on Del Maverick. So I don't think they want to move it to any other location, because that would be defeating the purpose of why it was put there in the first place.
Well, West Shore Plaza is, I'm like, still a mall, but not anymore. It's now being redeveloped. So I could see it, putting a campus there just to revitalize that mall. It wouldn't be a bad space. I propose that too.
What's funny, because the original HCC campus was when they vacated the airport for the new Tampa International Airport, they
Mhm.
still had all of that infrastructure left, and
Mhm.
people would go down, because I had to actually take courses. I was at USF, but in those days, you took course. You could, they would ship you off. They didn't have enough room. They would ship you off to HCC, to one of their campuses. So one of the campuses I went to was what they called the Dale Mabry campus at that time, but it was really the airport. So
Mhm.
you could literally walk through, your classroom might be behind what was once a Delta Airlines a Delta Airlines check-in situation. So it was kind of funny, because you were literally you could see the planes take off and land, because it was the old, it was literally the old airport where they where people would check in for their luggage and get ready for the flight. So they're
Well,
going back over in that direction again.
and also there was another reason which I did not know about it. I listened to JP Pierce on the weekend, and I think he has real good insight despite of what everyone thinks of him.
I like JP. I like
I do
JP.
too.
He's a
I do
good dude.
too. Yeah, he is. And he said with what's his face, the one that covered the Rays for many years. He was a former Marlins player. I forgot his name.
Uh, hmm. You mean on their broadcast?
Yes, forgot his
It
name.
wasn't. Was it Dan Plesa?
No. It was a Cuban player, Orestes Estrada.
Oh, okay. Well, he was on the Spanish broadcast.
Yeah. So they had a conversation, and they put little things out, like throwing things out there for this HEC site. And one of the things they mentioned was Terminal D, which is pretty much a brand new terminal at Tampa International Airport. And they said, and I don't know if this is true or not, imagine if they do a shuttle from the airport to that complex.
It wouldn't be tough.
I'm sorry?
It would not be difficult.
Exactly. But that would be huge for people traveling to get to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you got the multiplex, you got the spring training, you got the Rays ballpark, and you got Raymond James Stadium. So imagine how impactful that's going to be. in that
Yeah.
area alone. So
Well, then you're going to have that battery situation where you have entertainment zones in
year
there and
round.
business zones. So year round, you're going to have a captive audience. And the other thing is they don't have to do much in the way of infrastructure.
Exactly. So it's connecting the dots, and it makes perfect sense. It really
Well,
does.
when they originally talked about this, about when they started talking about when the new ownership group, Pat Zalewski, came in, the first thing Ken Hagan said, who was he's on the Hillsborough County Commission, he's basically the point man on the stadium. The
And
first thing,
pushing this.
yeah, he's been pushing it for decades. Um,
Yes.
and the first thing he said was, "We've got a campus, a place for the stadium that tomorrow we could start breaking ground." And that exactly was what he was talking about, was the HCC campus.
Yeah.
So that it makes a lot of sense to
Yeah.
um, to utilize that, as you say, because you've got Ray J there, you've got Steinbrenner there, you've got what would be a new stadium that it would be a very good, solid area for everybody, because they all know where the stadium is, Raymond James
Yes.
Stadium.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then you don't have any problems. In Washington, they built um, next door to Nats Park. The
Mhm.
owners of the DC United soccer team built
Yes.
an Audi Stadium, which they
Mhm.
paid for, and so you can get off at the um, at the Navy Yard um, metro stop and walk to and attend a Nationals game in the afternoon and a United game in the evening.
Mhm.
So
Unbelievable.
in theory, let's say you could attend a Buccaneers game on or a USF game before until they get their new stadium.
Right.
You could go to a USF game, go to a Rays baseball game in the afternoon, and then go over and watch USF play in the evening. So
Wow.
there's all kinds of interesting possibilities that will bring. And I do believe this, and a good friend of Evan and I, Andy Zimbalist, who's at Smith College. He's one of the most brilliant guys about sports business in the country. He's a sports economist, and the
Yes.
leagues call him all the time. Anyway, Andy's theory of the case is you have to be within 50 miles of your core audience,
Mhm.
and that lands perfectly with what they did with Raymond James Stadium. It's
Yep.
right there within 50. I mean, the reason being that is it's that far from St. Petersburg. You can get on the bridge and be over there, in a reasonably short period of time, as long as there's no blockages on the bridge.
Yeah. Oh
So
God, don't remind me.
yeah, I used to I used to joke that I carry a fishing pole in the back of my car just in case I got stuck on the bridge. I could the least I could throw out a rod out my window and perhaps catch.
Yes.
But yeah, it's crazy. But no, it's been wonderful chatting with you. Whatever you need, I'm more than happy to help out down
I
the road. And
appreciate
I
it.
think I should also say this: um, Evan Weiner is a true gem. Okay,
He is.
he's a friend of mine. He has been a friend of mine for oh goodness, a couple of decades. We have collaborated on projects. He is um, he is a great lecturer. He's a
Mhm.
not just a historian in the realm of sports. He's also a historian in many ways, and does many wonderful lectures all over the country, all over the world. And he has some really good books out there. If you want to check them out, I would highly recommend you check out Evan's books. They're really
I gotta
Well,
read the sports and politics of 2025. I know he does that every year, so
yeah,
I want to take a read at that for sure.
he's definitely, and it's funny. He's not really a sports fan, and I'm not saying something out of turn. He would tell you the same thing. Um,
Mhm.
he looks at this through the eyes of someone who is objective and not has an agenda trying to lean it toward the team in one way or lead it toward a city in the other way. Um,
Yes.
he's very objective in that regard. Um,
No, he made a perfect guess beforehand. Oh yes,
mhm.
especially to what I'm pursuing. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a gem and a good dude, and you know, by all means, um, if you're interested in any of that, he's got some good books out there. Um, I helped him on a couple of them, but he wrote them. So there's a difference between helping and a difference between writing. And I'm not going
Right.
to take any credit for anything other than I worked with him on some of them, and I know that the final product was couldn't have been better.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'll definitely take a look into it. I'll definitely read his most recent, and I'm gonna have him back on the show at some point. I know he does his YouTube videos of certain headlines, and I do follow them. I do watch them.
Mhm.
So it's just been awesome of the amount of guests I've gotten, and hopefully many more to come.
Well, I'm more than happy to return if you wish. Um, as
Absolutely,
we
no
as we get
question.
as we get further down the road in this morass of what's coming up in broadcasting, as I said, the next big thing to go is the baseball contract in 2028.
Yeah,
Um,
what I'll do is I'll have you back on that when the end of or maybe mid-season, doesn't matter.
yeah, we'll
Talk
see how
about
it.
that potential lockout happens.
I don't know that I think you can take away the term potential. I think there's
Yeah, it's gonna
I think
happen.
there's a. I mean, if, I don't know. I mean, I don't give Vegas odds, but if I were to guess, I'd say take the over on that one.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to happen. Which is in total line with baseball. Basically, when they had that work stoppage in '94, it was the best.
Mhm.
Leading into it was some of the best years that they had had. So
Yeah.
why not just blow it up whenever everybody's starting to enjoy it again? Um, so we'll have to see how that goes. I would like to
Yeah.
see a floor in that.
I
you
hope
could have
so.
a ceiling,
Yes.
but I'd like to see a floor because I really get upset because I know these teams are making money and they're not spending it.
Correct.
So
Yeah, I know a few of them already. Anyway, Jim, thank you so much for
oh, my
coming on
pleasure.
the show. It's awesome. Let's keep in touch.
Sure,
You have my contact info.
you
Let's
got
do this
mine too.
again.
Okay.
Yes.
Take care. Have a nice
Take care.
Sunday.
Thanks a lot. You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching and listening to Stadium BS. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and give a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform.